Whoa, hey guys, I've been gone for like 2 weeks, which is forever in internet years, so here's a bunch of small reviews for the movies I saw over the last month and a half, starting with... I was not terribly impressed by Okja. In fact, I think I can say I was quite disappointed. The presentation was great, but the whole thing just felt rather inconsequential. I get what it was trying to say about consumerism, corporations, and radical hypocrisy and all that, but the movie is just too blunt and forcefully whimsical for any of these messages to hold any weight. The whole dark and quirky shtick got old and tiresome real fast. This movie also made me acutely aware of the cliche where the main characters get into a treacherous situation really early on, and it only serves to show that the protagonists are capable of handling themselves, and has no relevance to the plot or consequence whatsoever, so it's really just a meaningless waste of time. Like, yeah, the main characters are totally gonna die in the first 5 minutes. You really got me there, movie. I would not recommend this one.
Jealous of us because we're better than you.
This movie is really weird, and it's definitely not going to appeal to a lot of people. That being said, I personally really enjoyed it. I noticed that a lot of folks are going with the old style over substance complaint, and that's always kind of irked me. Film is a visual medium after all, so style can certainly make up for a lack of substance. And it's not as though there's no substance in The Bad Batch. The movie had plenty of substance, it's just that it was obvious, shallow, and not terrifically insightful. As such, this movie's saving grace is its self-awareness. If it hadn't played up its own absurdity with over-the-top visuals and genuinely unique set pieces, then it wouldn't be half as interesting as it is. So I saw Dunkirk in IMAX 70mm, and it was good. I think good is where I'm gonna leave it though, because I do have some issues. Obviously, this film is pretty fucking amazing on a technical level, but I was genuinely let down by how repetitive it was. The nature of the plot meant that many of the scenes are shown multiple times, and it made it really hard for me to stay consistently invested. I feel like they could have found a better way to work around that. Also, I can't help but think that the film was held back by its PG-13 rating, where all the supposedly intense scenes are rendered somewhat less intense since the whole movie's basically been edited for content. Still, definitely worth a watch, even though I'll end up being of the opinion that it's grossly overrated by the end of the year. Now let's move on before I'm castrated by Nolan fanboys. We all know they're out there. The first 5 or so minutes of Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets is actually pretty fucking incredible. Unfortunately, the rest of the movie is just kind of okay. The acting is kind of crap. The story is not only ridiculously simple, it's mostly just a vehicle for the special effects, which are definitely the best part. They're beautiful, creative, and really European, almost distractingly so. Thankfully, the movie is not so self-important that this never became a glaring issue. It's pretty much a rendering of the classic space opera, as led by archetypal, jaded millennials seeking to balance large-scale cultural conflicts with smaller, pettier interpersonal ones, and in that respect, the movie works perfectly, although I can't really imagine that that's what anyone whose name isn't Luc Besson wanted out of this. So if that doesn't sound completely insufferable to you, and I completely understand if it does, I would say check this one out. Atomic Blonde is a movie that's almost too indulgent for its own good. The narrative is significantly more complicated than it needs to be. It's obsessively and yet somehow inconsistently stylized. The 80s music spot fest that serves as the movie's soundtrack more often than not comes across as simply forced, and yet it's still a shitload of fun. It's loaded with insanely watchable performances. It's sufficiently cathartic. It's not even close to boring, and that stairwell fight really is as awesome as they say. Check this one out, definitely. So far, A Ghost Story is the best movie I've seen all year. It is beautifully constructed and hauntingly emotional. I think it serves as a testament to the director's talent that he can make Casey Affleck standing motionless with a bedsheet over his head and Rooney Mara eating a pie for 8 straight minutes. Not only not boring, but also engaging, engrossing, and best of all, truly insightful. You would be doing yourself a disservice by not seeing this one, seriously. The Dark Tower is not so much a bad movie as it is barely a movie at all. It's a shell of a movie, and it's clearly indicative of a movie that was not only crippled by production issues, but probably wasn't going to be any good in the first place. The acting sucks, the dialogue is stiff and contrived, the action is muddy and badly filmed, the screenplay is in such a hurry to establish its own universe that it forces exposition into the middle of completely unrelated conversations. The only reason why this piece of crap is just 95 minutes long is because any scenes that didn't have dialogue or shooting in it were edited out in the clumsy clumsiest and most inefficient way possible. The only compliment I can give it is that Idris Elba and Matthew McConaughey are at least trying, and it would make this movie watchable if it were actually about the two of them, but it's not, so fuck this movie. Detroit is kind of a difficult movie to judge. From a technical aspect, everything was generally well done. The pacing in particular was pretty fantastic. The performances were also pretty great, except for the two girls, who were both consistently annoying. But I couldn't help but feel as though this movie was struggling for relevance when it really didn't need to. I mean, anyone who's not an idiot and realizes that racial violence and systemic oppression are still very real issues probably knows that the story this movie's trying to tell is kind of inherently relevant. So all these self-serving wink-to-the-camera dialogue moments just seem forced and unnecessary. And for a movie trying to say more than just racism is bad, don't be racist, being so superficial is kind of a big issue. Look, I realize that The Circle came out like 40,000 years ago, but I just recently saw it, and I think that pound for pound, relative to production value, it may very well be the worst movie I've ever seen. It is so horrendous that it actually physically hurt me, in that I had to physically tear myself away from my computer and stop watching to keep my heart from fucking exploding. And at least one of those times, I hit my knee on my desk and it really fucking hurt. I just needed to get this out of my system. This movie is trash. Don't watch it, please. So yeah, that about wraps this whole thing up. Here's a numeric recap of all the movies, and we will be back on schedule next week after Logan Lucky comes out. And until then, this is Downplay Reviews, always uploading quality content in a timely manner. See you then.